That's kind of the way that I've tried to approach it with WRP stuff, and certainly with Trinity as well. Like, I've kind of never done it for the money. It's like, I'm doing it because I'm a bike rider. So I want a product that's going to be really good. But in saying that, I think that's where the most authentic stuff comes, because it's like, well, you're doing it for the right reasons then. But I think a lot of Europeans kind of take it for granted. It's just like, oh, it's just a race down the road and it's a World Cup. It's like, it'll always be there. I could do it next year. Whereas Aussies, desperation is probably the wrong word, but for lack of a better term, it creates a bit of desperation. It's like, if we're gonna do this thing, well, like the Chad Reed type of guys.
Yeah, it's all
like,
or nothing. You're burning the boats at some point.
You just like, let's just send it.
I met a Gypsy.
There are another couple of brands that are doing this now. I'm not like, by no means am I saying they stole it off us or anything. It was just a bit of a timing thing. I'd certainly never, again, like, happy to admit, probably a little bit naive with it, but I'd certainly never heard of like virtual high pivot or explored the idea before we discussed it with Trinity. Yeah. But since then, there's been another couple of brands. So like Forbidden is one that Connor Fearon rides for.
Yeah.
So their new bike that they're just bringing out is virtual high pivot.
Yeah.
And then like the Norco range.
Yeah.
And those bikes have really just exploded on the market, because now you've got a bike that pedals insane and is no sacrifice for the descents.
Yeah.
And again, it just depends how you configure that rear end. You can get like just an awesome performing kinematic.
Yeah.
And then on a high pivot like ours, where you put that idler, like that high idler, the position of that dictates so much. Now ours, it's an iTrack, so if you look at like the Forbidden, that idler is attached to the mainframe.
Yeah.
Whereas ours is actually attached to the seat stay. So what that means is, as the axle moves, the idler actually swings out of the way as well.
Yeah.
So what you can do is get like a really high efficiency in its pedaling performance. But then as you descend and you blow through the travel, like its anti-squat figure kind of decreases, so it kind of moves out of the way of itself. So yeah, that's kind of it in short. But again, like, back to the point, if I kind of want to build a moto frame now.
Well, dude, the coolest, I think that the e-bike market is definitely going to be, I think that's going to be the space where people can really play.
I agree. Hey, so remember when Honda entered the downhill game?
Yep.
That's before my time. Like, I was only a young kid when they did that.
That was my prime.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That was fucking right in my spot.
So, like, I won't name any names or whatever, but I've chatted to a couple of guys that are way more cluey than me, and they were kind of around at that time, had some connections with Honda and whatever. And they were, again, this is secondhand information, so I could be wrong on this, but from what I've been told, it was really like an exploration for their moto program.
That's what I heard too, yeah.
So like, let's see what we can learn over here. Maybe we can get some feedback into our moto program.
Because it was so much easier to change geometry, and, like, your time to build and test is so much quicker when you don't have to add a motor and all that. Do you want to pull that up, Rones, the Honda Downer bike? Have you ever seen it?
Oh, dude, it'll blow your mind.
So gangster, bro. Well, and this was in like 04, 03.
Mid-O's,
Yeah, dude, it was fucking out of control.
So that's, I think, to explore on your point, I totally agree. Like, you've seen like gas and that enter the e-bike market, and I think they're using e-bikes as like, holy fuck, like, we can learn a lot from this sport that we can tie back into.
Look at that rig, bro.
Yeah, so
that shit is out of control. This
has given us a lot of inspiration, particularly with like the WRP gearbox and whatever.
Dude, showers and shit. Yeah, oh my god, bro.
You know they melted them all down, eh? Other than one.
I've heard there's a few.
Well, there might be two. But
yeah. How sick is that, dude?
Wild. So far ahead of its time.
Like, so where do you fit the electric motor into that thing? So there's a good example right there of the longer upper tube. So look how short those fork lowers are, man. So that right there could be a Supercross fork. So go back to that Honda downhill bike. So I guess, like, when you said that there's a lot of inspiration that's come from that, like what do you see in that bike that's like very unique for mountain biking?
Oh, the gearbox, 100%.
Yeah.
So what they had in here, well, it was really funny. So they had a couple of different iterations of that gearbox. And again, it was before my time, so a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've read or found out or whatever. But so they had, in the infancy of that gearbox, they had a CVT transmission, and they actually weren't allowed to race with it because CVT is effectively infinite amount of gears. And the UCI regs at the time, at least, stated that you had, I think it was 6 distinct gears.
Okay. So let's what's a CVT gearbox?
Like constant velocity transmission, like what you have in some cars.
Yeah, okay.
I think Hondas have a few of them, but you go in the internal workings. But basically, you've kind of got like cones, and like as the cones change or slide, you've got effectively a different diameter contacting one another,
which would give you a different
which
gear
gives you
ratio.
a different you a different gear ratio. But effectively, what you've got is like those cones can be anywhere on that surface, so it's effectively infinite range, or not infinite range. Sorry, you've got a defined bandwidth,
but in between the
bandwidth,
range, there's technically an infinite number of combinations.
And the UCI regs at the time, actually, this would be something for me to suss out at the moment. Go through the UCI rule book, because at the time, at least, it stated that you had to have a certain number of finite gears.
Yeah,
they're like, no, you can't run a CVT. So then there might have been some iterations in between then, but what they settled on was essentially just a cassette in a box.
Yeah.
So what you would normally have at the rear wheel is they've got in that black box in the middle.
Yeah.
Now Honda should have changed the world in mountain biking. I think they were in it for a defined period of time for their moto program or whatever they were in it for, and then stepped away, and then everyone else never really caught up, and they were just like, oh, well, we can keep on marching on how we're going.
Because that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, dude.
And there's still, it's not like the thing.
Yeah.
And they won everything.
Yeah, I mean, it had a couple of drawbacks after speaking to some guys that were on it. So Greg Menard was on it.
Yeah.
Brendan Faircloth was on it.
I didn't know Faircloth was on it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on it. Man, there is some, because he was relatively young at the time.
Yeah.
There's some footage of him right on that thing, and it is out of control.
Let's look for it.
So good,
Brendan Faircloth Honda, I want to see that shit.
He's a good route. Yeah, there'll be some stuff on YouTube for sure.
Yeah.
Just swinging off it. So one of the things with that was that, like, and this like tips over to another product that I've got for sale, but like you could change gears whenever you wanted on that thing, but it meant that the drivetrain was constantly moving, which was really good. But a couple of guys that had ridden it were saying that like when it got super muddy, you could actually feel the drag in the gearbox because you're dragging that chain through mud and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially what they've got is just a cassette in a case, and that's what I've been working on the last couple of years with Trinity. So it's not a carbon copy of theirs, but basically I've got a cassette in a box on our Trinity, which is pretty cool because it's kind of a lot of inspo from the RN01. So
yeah. We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.